That's the point of being on psilocybin.
That's the point of being on psilocybin, is you can talk about anything. It's amazing though to see how people, and I mean I've done it too. I can remember sometimes, definite times of resisting and being able to like hold back the the revelations. The I'm gonna go straight to the big one right now. You may have heard me talk about this. I don't know. So one time long ago, I cheated on Courtney. Went to Jamaica and I was doing this work. This Jamaican lady. I was doing some consulting, and one thing led to another, and we ended up having a night. And I, didn't tell Courtney. Came back home, and we ate mushrooms together. And she was just like all the time that I'm on mushrooms, there is just like fucking wearing on me. This just elephant in the room. Like, you've got to tell her. You've got to tell her. You're lying to the person you love. You've got to tell her. And I was just like, no, no. I mean, I was just like doing everything I could to just keep my mouth shut because it was just trying to come out. And probably about 3 hours into it or so, she's just like, something's up. There's something you're not telling me. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. It's like, you're not telling me. You're not telling me something. There's something up. I don't know what, something I can tell. No. And the whole trip, I just resisted it. No, there's nothing. There's nothing. I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, it was so grueling, so hard. And the next day, I woke up, was working in the farm, working down in the reishi room, I remember. And she was in there asking me a question, and you just tell she was just like, something's up. I was like, all right, here it is. Whew, that was hard. It was probably the hardest thing that I've ever had to admit to. But just thinking about the resistance that we can put up to, the truth, really.
Oh, and I don't know, that really takes me back to something that the first person who ever like introduced me to the psychedelic space said. They said, I don't know what it is, kind of like what you're talking about, this like existential like channeling out of you. Of They said, if you're taking this around someone and you're trying to hide something from them, they were like, you're better off just not to do it.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, you can like I did. You can resist it. You can lie through it. But it's there, and everybody knows there's something there. Might not know exactly what it is, but everybody knows there's something there, which is a beautiful thing about the mushroom, and one of the reasons why it would be so helpful to use in like business building or political sphere, like get people to dose together and see how you really feel. I mean, that's another thing that another mistake that I made is there's been times when I did not listen to what the mushroom said to me about the people that I was dosing with, and I continued to engage with them on a certain level, and it went south in very uh, unpleasant ways. So I guess that's like a big lesson, a big takeaway that I've been able to really sink in, is that there is no hiding in this space. There's no hiding, which is one of the beautiful things about it. And why, first of all, if somebody is trying to facilitate mushrooms with you and they won't eat mushrooms with you, that's an issue. That's an issue. If you're going to a retreat or you're got a friend and they like haven't taken mushrooms in a long time, or you're trying to, like, people think that there should be like the person in charge should be sober. And I agree that there should always be somebody there that can drive a car if necessary, or interface with the public, or whatever, something happens. Um, but it is really, really important to be able to take mushrooms with the person that is supposed to be helping you. You know,
Oh,
'cause-
this is just such a crazy thing that when you're talking about this, like what the way that we've tried to create the view of sacred medicines in our society, that, like, we're the ones trying to reinvent the wheel. And whenever I first learned about, like, yeah, the way that the ayahuasca was kind of used in traditional cultures, I mean, I'm sitting here almost like, God, this is so funny in hindsight, but like I was like, how in the world can these cultures like allow their 12-year-old sons and daughters to be participating in these things? Or like, I don't know, it just kind of like made me think about that, because in this like Western medicine mindset, it's just so much different in like what we're taught is appropriate and what we're taught is not.
Yeah,
Uh,
I love the realization that in cultures that have been working with the mushrooms for a long time, very often the person who is seeking help is not the one that takes the mushrooms.
that's an interesting one, that you talk about training. That's
Mhm.
kind of I mean, that's the place that you're getting to in true training,
Yeah,
that doesn't, in a way, like it doesn't even really make sense to me. Like I could say that it does, and like I can read about it. Um, you know, Dr. Tafur really painted it really beautifully whenever he talked about the training of that to get to that place.
hmm
But just so not like anything that we really have in our modalities. Maybe Reiki and some alternative approaches, but
yeah, yeah,
definitely different.
yeah. I mean, but even that, I feel like it's a. Well, I mean, I guess it's the same. There's a couple of ways that you could look at the practitioner dosing, in that they're either getting insight into what is wrong, or they're working on an energetic level, um, to somehow heal the person, which would be similar to Reiki. Yeah, that makes sense. That's a really good comparison, actually. Huh.
Yeah, I mean, when he talked about almost surgery was how that these shaman are like approaching
hmm
the work that they're doing whenever they're taking it, and maybe even the other person's not. That's just
Did I ever tell you about the time I had that surgeon that told me I did surgery on him?
no.
Yeah, I worked with a surgeon once, and retreat, Jamaica. I dosed with them, and there's a lot of backstory that I won't tell because it's just too much, but it helps me understand the mechanism. Um, but so he was laying on the floor, um, and I went and sat down beside him, just kind of get a read on where he was, and just closed my eyes and sat there. And I noticed that despite him being like 3 feet max from me, because I was on like a low sitting, um, kind of beach chair, and he was laying on the floor, he felt like he was so far away, like hundreds of feet away. And there's not necessarily. I have found when I go in there in the space and work with people, I don't ever call it working on people. It's working with people, because they, on some level, they have to give me permission, and we're working together. It's an exchange. And as I was sitting there with him, my left arm just kept pumping and squeezing and pumping. And I just sat there for probably 45 minutes just with my arm, just my eyes closed and my arm just pumping. And felt like with every pump, he got a little closer. He got a little closer. And he was lay there with his eyes closed. I would peek over him every now and then. He was just eyes closed because I don't want people to really see me, you know. And that's something that is talked about in the training, I think, in the upcoming couple chapters. Is that, yeah, when you're just generally when trip sitting, I'm trying not, I don't want people to see me because it's their experience and I'm just there to support them and I don't want to distract them in any way. And so just there, just like doing this weird pumping thing that started happening a few years ago. And like when it happens, I can feel like my right arm just like swelling and like there's like feels like there's just like this flow of energy coming out of my right hand. I'm just there clenching. Sometimes it's just like my left is just clenched and just all I can do is just breathe and sweat and pump, like just pouring this energy out of my right arm. And that was really all it was on my end, you know, but I could feel something happening. But there was nothing other than this visual of him being very far away and getting closer. And when it just got to a certain point where I just felt like, okay, now's the time to stop. And so I got up and walked away and went and circled around, checked on other people and stuff. And by the end of the night, I came back to him, and he said, Eric, were you sitting by me for a little while? I was like, oh yeah, I was with you for probably a good 45 minutes or so. And he was like, did you do surgery on me? And I was like, well, I don't know that I would call it surgery. I don't know that I really, I don't know that I did anything. I was just there and kind of feeling what I felt and just being with the whole thing. And he was like, no, you did fucking surgery, dude. You went into me and you cut out all the shame and guilt that's inside of me. And I was like, okay, whatever, didn't really, we talked about it a lot more and integration and more so about his, shame and guilt that he had felt in childhood and how he felt free from it and stuff now. But looking back on it, it did feel like there was some kind of extraction taking place, and that was pretty early on when things started kind of ramping up. There was a certain point where, like there was some message. There was this one night I was working. There was a women's retreat, and I like stayed away from the women, but they wanted me, the female facilitators wanted me to be within earshot. And so I was over at kind of like about 150 feet away with a fire, and they were underneath the big pavilion. And this is the backstory. And as I'm sitting there, I'm on, I think 5 grams. I did 5 grams that night, I think. And I can just, as I'm sitting there, I can feel, it just feels like all this heat coming out of that pavilion area, even though it's so far away from me. It just felt like heat pouring out. And so as I'm sitting there with my eyes closed and, trying to understand what it is that I'm feeling and trying to just be with whatever the feeling was, this kind of message came to me that said, in short, it was like, we're going to show you how to use your wounds to heal other people. Okay. I was like, okay. And that's when my left arm just started clenching. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? And it just did that for like hours, just probably 2 to 3 hours, just like, I couldn't stop it. I wasn't doing it per se. It was just happening through me. And it later went on not during that retreat. It was same thing. Like I could feel this heat coming, and it felt like in this pumping of my arm that it was pulling in the heat, and my right arm was just like out going like this. I was like, what the fuck is happening? Just doing it. And so that all transpired. Athena, she was there. It was her first retreat. That was I think the second time she ever took mushrooms was the second dose on that retreat. And she came out and we talked, and then other people started coming out and gathering on the fire. And I didn't really spend a lot of time with it. But then in a subsequent retreat, actually one that David was on, it kept the Rumi quote that what is it, that light enters it's through the wound that light enters the body. Okay. And it occurred to me, as I had kind of inklings of for a long time, that I was very out of balance in terms of masculine and feminine. I'd grown up in a pretty unhealthy masculine environment. And I also grew up working construction for my dad, and I hated it. Most of the time was pissed at him because he was just so overbearing and critical and unpleasant. And I had this later trip where I remembered, and my arm, from that first time, my arm, every time I would take mushrooms around people, that would happen. I was just like, I don't know what the fuck's going on. And so then later I have this trip where I realize, as I'm working with people, that I had this vision of me as a teenager working for my dad and hammering and just being like, you motherfucker, I can't wait till I'm out of this house, you motherfucker, and just like anger. And my right arm is still significantly stronger than my left arm because I grew up just swinging hammers. I mean, I was always packing shingles and swinging hammers and that kind of stuff. And so it showed me that one of the ways that I help other people is by healing myself. I mean, that's really the only way. That's how we heal others, is by healing ourselves. And so as I strengthened the left arm, and as I intentionally balanced the masculine and feminine in my life, then like I became healthier, and I was able to help people in different ways. And then the mode that it worked through me started to shift a little bit. So it's just that concept of by balancing our imbalance is how we bring balance to the environment around us. If that makes sense.
No, I mean, that definitely does. It kind of made me think, like, when did you first start? When did this practice switch from you're just taking mushrooms with people to, oh, you're actually like helping them beyond just this exchange?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I started to get a small understanding of that. I told you about my buddy who had the bladder infection, and he told me about it I don't know. We took some mushrooms together. A guy I'd known for a long time, and he wanted to take mushrooms to get over it was actually a porn addiction. And we took mushrooms at my house up in Indiana, the farm. And we went in, and all of a sudden my groin was just like on fire. I was like, what the fuck is going on here? I'm just sitting there like rocking in pain out of nowhere. And as I'm sitting there trying to figure out what the heck's going on, he goes over to pee, and he's like, oh man, I got a UTI that's just killing me. And I didn't think about it. It just, boom, was, you're feeling his experience. And I was like, oh shit. And it was very, very real. And then that whole night turned into this crazy thing. But it didn't. I don't think it really sank in that time. It was just like, oh, okay, I can feel other people. Um, and I started to get a little bit deeper understanding of what it means to be an empath, right? Um, but I want to say, that was probably like the first time that it became, that time at the women's retreat is the first time that it became really apparent that I could use my system to help bring balance to the systems around me. Um, Before that, it was always like, well, the help that I provide is being able to talk after the experience, and we process, and then it started. And then after that women's retreat experience, and it just kind of like it gradually moved into different levels of understanding of how. And one of the most profound that I experienced, and what's probably still my favorite, like I love it so much when this comes on, is when I lose my mind, when I go crazy, when that whole mushroom insanity comes on. Um, because it told me, I was told once, as I was working with some people, you go through years and years of dozens of different like broke my brain scenarios, like I'm fucking insane, I'm not coming back. And then you come out of it and you're like, okay, got through that. Let's process that and move on. But finally, there was a time where I was sitting there working with some people, and I closed my eyes, and I could feel that it's really just a complete loss of self, right? It's a complete loss of identity. I'm everyone. I'm everything. I'm everyone. I'm everything. I'm no one, and I'm nothing. And there's just like this fragment. There's like just this little, just a thread out there of an Eric, right? Of an identity. But overall, it's just gone. And it told me, for lack of better words, that the value of that place is becoming everyone. You become everyone, and you become God all at the same time. And then you can go in and just fix yourself. If I'm you, and I'm broke, and I'm God, and I can see all the things that are out of balance, then I can just go into myself and like find the balance. And that was when it became very, very real that we are all one. We are all one. We just have this like temporary distinction between each other, but with the right dropping of boundaries and inhibitions, then we can meld completely without physically touching.
Yeah, I think that you really like the way that you put that. It just crazy, 5 years ago, and to a lot of people, like that sounds odd, but yeah, no, I definitely appreciated that.
No, I get that. Yeah, but I mean, what people don't realize, and Smokey vomits over here. What what I would like people to understand is that first of all, I'm a skeptic. First of all, I don't just believe anything. It took me many, many years and many, 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 many experiences of the same thing over and over to be able to say, okay, this is what it seems like is going on. It's consistent enough. It's repeated, and other people are starting to confirm things. And what I'm really starting to realize, like we're here talking, like this is some deep shit. This is some stuff that you are not gonna hear. I don't know anywhere else that you're hearing this talk within the psychedelic world right now. And I'm sure there's other places. I know I'm not the only one. I know I'm not trying to say that I
It's
am,
not open channels.
but it's not open channels, and that's what I want to be able to provide. And you know, I want to like we our people going through the cleric training program. Like this is really the valuable. This is some very valuable stuff that I want it to be on record because again these medical establishments that are going to be working with psilocybin are going to start to run into phenomena that they can't explain. And I just want to be a resource. I want to help people advance in this work faster than I did. Um, I consider this really a gift of some very deep knowledge that may sound, unbelievable or extreme or just plain out flaky. Um, and I think the only reason that I actually consider myself an authority on this is because I have repeated it so many times, and I didn't just believe it and like, oh, I got a dream catcher, so like whatever, I'm catching the dreams. Or I don't know what the fuck it is. Like I pick on dream catchers a little bit. Those of you who have dream catchers, it's okay. I've got lots of friends with dream catchers. Uh, So anyway, yeah, I just really, I'm sure at some point, I've got 8 people watching right now. Would love to have some of you all come on and talk. Tristan, go ahead and share that link. So if anyone wants to join the conversation, they can easily. But I'm pretty confident that if we keep sharing this information and people keep having their experiences, because I talk to people and share my experiences with them, and they're like, that's what I was experiencing. Like not necessarily the stuff that I just described. There's a plethora of weird experiences to be had. But there's been many times, and particularly that male-female balance has been a thing that, as I've related my experience there have been people who have said, I get it now. I get what my experience was trying to tell me, So I just want to be a resource.
Yeah, no, we watched that. I wish I had the name for it. It was the Anthony Bourdain documentary that I think maybe Chris had mentioned.
Oh yeah,
it's one of the reasons that it kind of brought up like what we entered into here on. It was just a very heavy like life that this guy lived of kind of having this nihilistic like internal thing going on, having a life that was very surreal, and then just no longer feeling human at a certain point. Like it just really seemed like he was just constantly an actor and there was zero authenticity. And like he had talked about at some points like having uh acid trips whenever he was younger and such. But it was really one of the reasons that I was kind of bringing like wanting to talk about it. It's just like, and you touched on it a little bit within just the subconscious lingering that even is tethered into these guilt shame cycles within the surgery person. But just what is it you think about like these alternative, I don't want to use the word alternative approach, but these like entheogens that kind of is able to break depressions that years of certain types of like Western approaches hasn't been able to really like tap into. I mean, you talked about it a lot. There's people that were coming to Jamaica that were saying like, "This is it. It's my last chance." Like,
yeah. I mean, what I want to kind of just start out by saying is that, anybody that thinks that psilocybin or any psychedelic is going to fix their depression, cure the depression, it has a gross misunderstanding of how these things work. They can offer us a very powerful window in which we can make mental changes. We can change the ways that we think and the ways that we behave, that will then have far-reaching effect on our mental, spiritual health. They do provide that kind of reset, they give us a different perspective on existence. They, part of that perspective, one of the most powerful aspects of that perspective is that it allows us to see that we are not just material. This is going to continue to come up with the research. It's why the wellness medical approach to psychedelics is ultimately going to lead to churches. It's just going to. It's going to lead to some kind of spiritual practice or organization, and that's supported by the research that says that the positive outcomes are most closely linked with the mystical experience. We get bogged down in this world of day to day and like all the fucking news cycles and the debt cycles and all the stuff, the family drama and the unhealed trauma. And we just, even when we go to church, like most people that go to a regular church, they don't experience themselves truly as a spirit. They don't experience themselves as a non-physical entity. And like all of that depressed thinking is caught up in this kind of space-time where it's like, it's a three-dimensional world. I'm going to either get enough done before I die or not. And, and like, we're like racing towards the fucking grave when that's not the reality of who we are. The reality of who we are is infinite. That is our true self, is infinite. And to be able to get a glimpse into that, that's the thing that can allow us to feel hopeful and feel like, okay, maybe I'm not my depression. Maybe I'm not my anxiety. And if we don't support that, though, if we don't support those revelations with community and with information that helps to reframe and retrain our thinking, then we're eventually going to fall back into those patterns. And I feel guilty of that for a very long time. I dosed for a long time by myself and didn't have anybody to talk to. I didn't know that I had to fill my head with, new material, new thoughts. And yeah, once I started doing that, it still didn't cure my depression. I still struggle with depression. I had a few days last week that were pretty down, but because I now wake up every day and pretty much either silently meditate or sit out on the back porch and watch the birds. And every morning I listen to some teacher that reminds me of my infinite spirit. Neville Goddard is great. This guy, Joseph Rodriguez, is great on YouTube. He's got a great channel. I listen to a lot of Abraham Hicks here lately. Abraham Hicks is, thank you, ex-wife number 2. She introduced me to Abraham Hicks, and I called it bullshit then. I was like, this is bullshit. I'm not buying it. I'm skeptical. And now I listen to Abraham Hicks, and it's the closest thing that I've heard to what the mushrooms have said to me. Repeat, repeat, repeat. And so I can listen to her in the morning for 15 to 60 to 90 minutes sometimes. And it's like the mushrooms, like that infinite self talking to me. And like, that's what we need reminders of. We don't need fucking like the medicines that they just keep dulling us. We need to be more aware of what we are, more aware of our power, really. Like, we have such an amazing potential just within our thinking, just within our feeling, like our hearts, the love, what the love that we have can do in our immediate environment, even if you don't leave your bedroom. I mean, that was Courtney had an experience a few months after I had the experience, which I've had it multiple times, but this most recently I'm thinking of, I was sitting here in my bedroom and I was meditating and just like, man, my heart was just like so much love, so much love. And excuse me, I realized like, oh man, this is helping Miss Smith. Like she's feeling this. Like my neighbor. And I didn't have to leave my room, but I knew that it was having an impact on her. It's like, the breeze blows across the whatever the terrain and affects everything that it touches. And those waves of emotion are no different, really. We haven't been trained to pick up on them. We can't see them. First and foremost, can't see them. We don't know they're there. But I mean, ask yourself, you ever been in a room with somebody where they felt they were such bad vibes that even when they're standing behind you and looking the other way, you can feel it and you're like, oh boy, tense up in here, like you're feeling their energy. You're feeling the frequency that is emitting from their heart. It's beautiful, powerful.
Yeah, there was a point where you were talking about just the connection with everything that it's just these like small triggers of consciousness, like just staring at your freaking dog is while under the influence of the mushroom, it is kind of like a perplexing thing in and of itself too. Going back,
try to talk with your dog, like communicate with your dog telepathically.
So I don't have I haven't, but I think it's been received very well. Like, and it's crazy because like it's just space-time thing where it's like when you're in this default world that you just you put your dog off. You don't even like warrant what they're trying to communicate with you. It's like tug them on a leash. Let's go this way. But then like I'm coming down and then like let's go on this wonderful walk. And then just to like, I was about to turn left. I like watch my dog stomp her paw, look at me, and then like want to go this way. And I was trying to like, just, I don't know. It is very amazing in a way. Like, we don't see the same things. We don't hear the same things. Like, but like, I don't know, just this, they freaking love and they're there and it's kind of crazy in a way.
I love what you said. I mean, I think that's a very powerful image there. Just that we dismiss our dogs like most of the time. If you got a dog, you're like, you got in the trash, or you shit in the floor, or come on, let's go. You're trying to walk. Let's go this way. No, this way, or whatever. We have a tendency with our kids. We do the same thing. With our friends, we just like we take. If we're not aware, then there's such a potential to take for granted the beauty and the complexity that's in every moment. I mean, being on mushrooms around dogs, it becomes very, very clear that the dog is not just a dog. Like a dog's purpose is not to just be cuddly with us or be our best friend. But at the same time, that actually is what they're doing. They're being our best friend and they're like helping us carry our weight. They're helping to distribute and they're soaking up all that we're putting out, and just like you see a dog, when a dog's owner is hurt, like the dog goes over and tries to help them feel better, right? That's happening all the time. And I believe, Smokey here beside me, he's in the last couple of weeks, I've seen him like he's hobbling, he's not moving as well, and he's had some like bowel issues as far as being able to wait to go on a walk and stuff. And I recognize that he's been on this planet for a long time in terms of a dog, and he recognizes it too. And I see now more than ever, he is at my side. I mean, he's always been my homie, but he's like at my side. If I go to take a shower, he's laying outside the shower door. And my sense is that he knows that like that time is coming, and he wants to like be of service to me as much as he can while he's still here. I know that he wants my love too, but just in that we know even if you're mean to a dog, it will still love you. Not I mean not if you're abusive necessarily, but you know people can be pretty shitty to dogs, and the dogs will still love them. So that there, because that's such a consistent experience with dogs, that tells me that he's thinking about my condition a lot more than he's caring if I'm thinking about his. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So animals are amazing. Birds are so much more than we know. Birds are so open to like, being a messenger for consciousness. They're so open to it, and I think there again. We can go to the dog. We can talk about electromagnetism, but even more with the birds, we can talk about electromagnetism in terms of migration and how they are able to sense magnetism.
How do you know where you're going, man? You're telling me you don't feel this?
Yeah, yeah. So, dude, well, I've had some serious, crazy experiences with birds on mushrooms where it's just like, oh, right, okay, I get it. This is what's happening. Okay, let's just go with it. What else are you gonna
do? I know that you referenced a snow leopard at some point, and I wonder what that would be like.
Meeting a snow leopard while on mushrooms?
I mean, my dumb brain's going there, yeah.
Oh, we had bobcat up in Indiana. We had a bobcat, and me and my buddy both 2 separate times. We went to go piss in the forest line, and you get over there pissing, and you're standing there, and you see 2 green eyes staring at you from out in the woods, and you're like, "Oh fuck, this big cat has got me in his sights, and I can't see him." Like yeah, no, the bobcat that was pretty interesting to trip, and you'd hear him. I had this one night tripping by myself up there. I used to only dose. I used to only dose starting at 9 p.m. and I had a whole fucking get up. I had a whole thing I would do and my fire and everything. And this one night, I go up there by myself and dose and full moon. God, I remember that. Oh, the full moon on mushrooms is a different. Anyway, I'm sitting on top of this hill. I got my little hut that I built with a little roof over it and just chilling there in my spot. And it was probably like 2 or 3 a.m., coming down. Moon's just up in the sky. I'm just like, God, man, And out in the distance, like way out in the distance, I heard like a, and then like over here, and it just started all around. It was bobcats, and I heard the one that was back on our property. It was its den was probably like 100, 200 yards from where I was tripping, and man, that was amazing. God, that was such an amazing night. We live, especially those of us living in the city, and I'm sure you got some stories from being out in the country and just the cycles and the things that happen out in nature, where the buzz of humans isn't kind of like creating this bubble where all that can't enter. Coyotes. We had this one night. Me and the same buddy who's UTI felt. We took a dose about the same time, 2:00 or so. Come down. We're gonna walk through my farm, through the woods. We're gonna go on a little night hike and go up to the flat field there and check out the moon. And you tell it timing. We get up there at the top of this field, and we're standing there looking at the moon. And we're just like, oh, this is amazing. This is so amazing. And the moon. Now, for those who have not been out in the woods or in the plains in a full moon and see how that white light, just blue white light on everything, it is magical. And especially, your senses are all heightened from 6 or 7 grams. And we're standing there, and I look down, and I kind of noticed that the grass is all mashed down around us. It was tall grass, and it was kind of mashed down all around us. And I started looking around. I was like, and I saw like bloody bones of a deer, right? And then started hearing around us coyotes howling, and like saw that we're like standing in a kill spot, and they're surrounding us right now. I was like, yeah, let's get back to the fire there, pal, shall we? God, that was such a night. Oh,
The difference between you and the coyote is, or you and the deer is.
he's faster.
What is the difference? I mean,
The deer is faster and better capable of defending himself from a pack of coyotes. That's the difference. That's why I got the fuck out.
gosh.
We got anybody chatting here? We got anybody on here? That good. Anybody want to talk with us?
Even just ask a question.
Yeah, just type in a question. Don't make me just sit here and tell all my stories tonight. Or that's okay. It's whatever this is meant to be.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I wanted to consider going into this week is be more, after listening to Abraham Hicks and all that, I wanted to kind of like try and channel that kind of person that I am, not necessarily while on mushrooms, but like on the come down, or as you're prepping for it too, like, I don't know, when I'm going to take mushrooms, then for a couple of hours before, at least, I mean, I usually know 24 hours in advance when I'm going to do it. I fast the day of, and then for a couple hours beforehand, I just really go quiet and kind of go internal and become more, just try to raise my level of awareness than before. So we see we got Sasha coming in. What's up, Sasha?
Hey there, I'm doing well. Can you hear me?
Yeah, good to hear you. Good to hear from you again.
So I've been listening to the first hour or so of the podcast, and I've been enjoying it. I had a question for you.
Yes, let's hear.
I'm often unable to easily talk about the nature of my psychedelic experiences, or some of the, broadly put, my experiences themselves. And often a lot of people use the word ineffable to help describe these sorts of states of awareness. And one of the hurdles I had in writing my book was conveying a lot of this, shall we say, supernatural information in plain language that most people can understand. I'm sure you've had a lot of difficulty in talking about the nature of your work to, shall we say, the average Joe. What are some of the, shall we say, approaches that you've used? Is there a set way that you go about trying to explain these sorts of things, or is it more off the cuff and just being honest with them as it comes to mind?
It is being honest as it comes to mind. It's a really wonderful question. I'm really grateful for you to ask this, because it is something that I know is a struggle. And I would say that just kind of like, even in the way that I've just a little bit more tried to come into this conversation intentionally tonight, um, engaging with that memory in a really thoughtful, intentional, experiential manner, not just like when, how when you're just kind of like really off the cuff, you're just like, fuck, did I even tell it like it happened? Oh, so first that, and then over time, as we share our stories, even when they're unclear, I think early on, we are able to hear ourselves and we're able to see the response in others. So that gives us feedback and like, okay, what is it that people are able to, touch onto? And even pointing out my early skepticism, that's a tool I think that I've learned how important that is, because if I just come off like, I got my Dreamcatcher collection. I love you, Dreamcatcher people. It's just kind of a point of reference, then it's going to be challenging to receive. And I've had the, amazing fortune of being able to talk, share with, and hear from so many intelligent, highly educated people in the space. I've worked with some amazing individuals who have, in sharing their experiences, it's certainly helped me learn how to better share mine.
And I think that there's something to be said too about when you are being honest, and you're being sincere about what you're sharing, that it's also okay if like the person across from you doesn't understand it or isn't able to understand it or to comprehend it. Maybe they haven't had a similar experience. Maybe they have no experiences in that type of a space. Like there's certain theoretical physics books that are going to be written in the next 5 years that I have no clue. Even if I try to understand them, I don't have the means to do so. Mm-hmm. So I think that's also okay too, and like giving yourself that space.
Yeah.
I've noticed that some of the most difficult people to reach are, I'm painting with a broad brush here, but Christian folk, mm-hmm. especially the fundamentalist type. And one good way I've found to get around those sorts of biases is to get this, actually quote verses that could actually support such practices. For example, there's one in the book of Job. If I'm not mistaken, the translation is, ask the plants and they will teach you. Ask the plants and they will teach you.
Interesting,
yeah. Because a lot of those folk tend to think of ayahuasca retreats as, okay, you're going off into the woods to do drugs again, that sort of thing. But
now we can really expand on this. I'd love to, because this is really such a great topic. So I'm pretty well versed in particularly Judeo-Christian sacred texts, but a variety of others as well. Job, I don't recall that in Job. I've only read that particular book, I think, once. I'm just kind of, I don't know why that one didn't do much for me, but I have likewise used Old Testament and New Testament to relate to Christians the presence of mushrooms in the Bible. I had when I was probably like my early 20s, I was working in a restaurant. I mean, it was very soon after I came into mushrooms, so I would have been like 20, maybe 20, 21. And there was a lady there who was a Bible scholar. I mean, her dad was a preacher. She's like, I think she was like still virgin. Like, it was her life. She didn't last in the restaurant business long. I don't know if you ever worked food service, but
yeah,
special type of people. And anyway, I asked her. I was reading the Bible really heavily because after leaving Catholicism and being like, look, they never actually read the Bible. So what's in this book? And started reading, And there's all these herbs and Old Testament and Leviticus and all that. There's just full of all these prescriptions of burning certain herbs, and it's so specific. And they have, like you said, I mean, we didn't directly say, but as the plants, they have that spirit to them, proceed anyway. And so the question became, as I was finding so many mushrooms and so curious about mushrooms, like, well, where's mushrooms at in the Bible? I asked her, and she's like, ha 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 ha, there's no mushrooms in the Bible. That's a funny question. Well, lo and behold, we know. I mean, I don't know. Knowing, for me, it's a knowing. There's still people who need more evidence, but the manna in Deuteronomy is straight puffball mushroom, straight up edible puffball mushroom. And go ahead.
I was going to say, a lot of people have alleged this. The best way I could describe the scholars I've heard who have talked about this said that would be, I guess it'd be fair to say, a far-fetched interpretation of what's written. If I'm not mistaken, John Allegro brought this up in Sacred Mushroom and the Cross. But when you ask the people who, although John Allegro did take part in the translation of the Bible, a lot of scholars, biblical scholars, lambasted him because he was essentially inventing, what's the right word? Certain prefixes and suffixes to sort of add his own twist into the. I'd hate to misrepresent his work, but essentially that's what I've learned, that essentially while it is possible that manna could have been puffball mushrooms, and it would make sense because they sprout from the ground, right? They're small.
They wither. They come with the dew. They wither in the sun. If you slice them and dry them, or slice them and if you slice them and dry them or parboil them, these white loaves on the ground that come with the dew and wither in the sun, if you slice them and dry them or parboil them, then you can preserve them. If you don't, then they breed worms and stink, or erupted maggots. Okay.
Now you see, that sounds just like a lot of mushrooms that I've seen before.
I've told the story multiple times, but like that's, as I'm reading this, I'm picking wild mushrooms. I'm getting into mushrooms. I go and pick some fairy ring mushrooms, Marasmus aureates, and leave them on my table at night. So smoke a bowl or smoke a spliff, fall asleep on the couch, wake up the next morning, and they had erupted in maggots. And this all happened kind of within the same probably 3-month period. I'm sure it was me finding the mushroom thing happening after reading the story. And then the other kind of kicker in there, which, when people say far-fetched, to me, it's only far-fetched because they're not looking close in. They must be looking far off at some other alternate than what is directly in front of them. But manna, from what I understand, and I've read this in multiple references, that manna was a Syrian term for mushroom. And the Israelites, so the Israelites, whoever they were at this time, whatever these people were, I mean, it's a loaded fucking word there. So whoever these people were in this story, if it ever even happened, dig me, they come out of Egypt with this guy who had been trained by the pharaohs and the wise men, and mushrooms were the food of the gods for the Egyptians. That's documented as well, right? So it was only the elite that were consuming mushrooms. So this supposed Moses goes out with the knowledge of edible mushrooms, these delicacies, right, and medicines, and finds these things, and so it says they called it manna because they didn't know what it was, and what actually that could be interpreted into, they borrowed a Syrian term, they borrowed a foreign term for a thing that they didn't have a word for. All right, and you can see now over in the Sinai region, they still in markets sell the desert. They call it the desert truffle, but it's a puffball, and it's a big white loaf looking mushroom that they sell in the Syrian markets. So yeah, whoever says that that's a far off interpretation, I'd like to have a talk with them.
No, I'm actually looking at it now, and I'm seeing it's called, I'm going to get this wrong. Tervesiaceae, Terfeziaceae, CEAE.
the species? Not species name. That's a local name for that mushroom, or is it the
That
species name?
that sounds like a Latin
The genus.
name.
Okay. Awesome.
It's in the family Tervezaceae.
Tervizaceae. All right. Cool.
The EAE.
Mm-hmm.
You have
That's
to pronounce
definitely
it.
Latin. Yeah, that's Latin for sure. Nice. Yeah. And then the other place where manna is mentioned in the Bible, the only other place where manna is mentioned in the Christian Bible is in Revelation, when it talks about the hidden manna that is revealed at the time of the King of Kings. And, you know, I have some of my kind of parallel studies have been Ethiopian history. I got became aware of Rasta for a while, and I'm still very aware of it. It's not, the doctrine is not in my life like it used to be, but there's some very interesting historical coincidences with Maria Sabina, Haile Selassie, the shifting world, and the mushrooms becoming so now globally present. Anyway, Johnny, what's up, man? Manna is mushrooms too. Told a buddy about it years ago. See, I'm right.
I'm definitely going to look more into that section of Deuteronomy. It's always good to look into these sorts of things. It's a really interesting topic for sure.
For sure. You know, and another kind of way that I have used language to kind of use the tools of language as an opportunity to change minds and inject information about this very, like you said, weird, like you bring it up in a certain company and like you just farted or something. I don't know. Everybody. And that is just to say it. And then immediately when you say it, people are in this kind of shocked and open state, right? And then you just, boom, if you have a line about research and depression and all the medical, then I have seen it so many times, people who were just completely resistant. And then in that moment, there really is this kind of moment where you can feel how they're like, psilocybin, and then they like their guard is down. They're not like energetically, they're like, what? And then you can be like, yeah, boom. And you just see them take it and they're like, oh, wow. Okay, there's the Job, ask the green plants of the earth and they will teach you. Let the fish in the sea tell you. Oh, you got any experiences, Sasha, with animals talking to you or communicating with you? Do you have any experiences that you'd like to try?
I have yet to have such a bond with another animal. I do believe it's possible. A lot of people think that such things are the product of delusions, but I have an open of enough mind to go along with such ideas. I've definitely heard people, close friends of mine, who have said that they've had conversations with trees. Mm-hmm. What exactly those conversations were about, I forget off the top of my head, but it was quite a loving, beneficial experience, simply put.
Yeah, all my conversations with trees have been quite lovely. I've never met a tree I didn't like.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, one of the translations that you could offer for a dieta, for example, if a shaman is taking part in a tobacco dieta, they are said to be in a conversation with the plant and that they are receiving knowledge from the plant. Now, I've been smoking cigarettes since I was 16, and strangely enough, I've yet to receive a message. Perhaps the only one I've ever had was, if I had too much, it's just saying, you've had enough.
Mm-hmm. What about cannabis? Never had cannabis talk to you?
Well, it's just like what Sasha Shulgin said about his first mescaline experience. he took, however many 100 milligrams of mescaline sulfates, and he had a flash of memories that came before him of childhood and everything else. And he realized that those memories, those experiences were not brought into him by the mescaline, but rather that those experiences were inside him the whole time. I've definitely been afforded insights into my life by using cannabis. I wouldn't go so far as to say that cannabis has consistently brought me the same level of self-awareness and self-awareness that psilocybin can offer.
True. Yeah. I for me, what comes is like having actually like I'm just wondering like, what is it? What's going on here? What's going on? Because a lot of times I think, don't we all kind of assume that other people experience life like we do? Like, oh, this is how it is to be a person, right? And there's been, I could count 3 times right now, very easy, where like I was completely out of weed, like the weed is gone, and I'm laying in bed, and I hear, I'm over here. This one time was like up in my hut. It's like up in my hut. I had this dirt floor hut that I built for tripping in. I had a fire pit in it, and it was, just very basic. And fuck, I'm laying there. I'm have no cannabis, and there's no way that I could remember that shit was there. And I mean, it was like there was not like a voice per se, but this like, this is where I'm at. This is where I'm at. And I go up there and the flashlight and everything. And sure enough, there's a half of a spliff there. And I'm just like,
look at that.
That thing. There was this one time I'm just like I'm in somebody's house, right? I'm in a friend's house and I'm walking through their hallway, and just like out of all I hear, just like there's weed in that drawer. There's weed in that drawer. And it's like a low drawer, not one that you would like. It's just like in some hallway, and I open it. And I'm like, damn, what the lion's mane? Sorry, I'm gonna get on a rant to tell my stories, and that's not what this is really all about. But I do think the plants can talk to us.
That makes me think about the fact I actually just flew back from North Carolina earlier today, and 2 days ago when I flew into North Carolina, I got into my mom's house, and essentially I was about to go smoke, and my mom could tell that I was about to go smoke. And for some odd reason, I had this attraction towards one particular drawer in the kitchen, and I'm like, I don't know why I'm feeling this, but I started to go outside, and as I'm walking towards the patio door, I see my mom open the drawer, pull out a pipe, break off a nug. Which is, a little bit strange for me because she used to wag the finger back in the day, but times have changed.
So did she come out there and smoke with you, or?
She did not. Okay. However, I would have a good reason to believe that she does, but sparingly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she's packing a bowl then. Yeah. Right on. My parents are not smoking weed. No. What about mushroom experiences? You were saying like having reluctancy or a challenge trying to share mushroom experiences. Do you have one that you would like to try to work out?
Well, I've always found that using poetic metaphors is a good way to go about describing some of these experiences. I often rely on the phrase "it is as if," because it helps distinguish when you're conveying these sorts of experiences. It helps your audience understand that what you experienced was not, shall we say, a hallucination, but more so the product of an overactive imagination, what you might call a vision. The ones I always find, for me, a lot of the most difficult experiences to convey are the ones that are autobiographical in nature, while experiences that related to me personally dealing with some issues, emotional baggage, what have you. And I think a lot of that reluctance that comes with sharing these experiences is at least partially a reluctance to open up about those things that you went through. And although I like to say that I'm an open book, it can be hard to show vulnerability when talking about the heavy nature of these experiences. And by bringing up these experiences, by describing them, it can sort of trigger some of those same emotions, and you might not necessarily want to relive that in that moment. There are definitely times where I've seen Hopkins patients, start to, shed a tear, break down a little bit when they talk about, how simply put, how they could that they could feel the healing. It's a really profound thing, but I'll be perfectly honest with you. I've been diving so deep into the dark side of psychedelics lately that I've been apprehensive AF to go back in. And a lot of this, somebody actually gave me a bit of wisdom the other day, that a lot of people go into the experience with the hope, resolution, intention to resolve some issues that they're facing, to deal with the darkness, so to speak. But simply put, I keep hearing the telephone ringing, but I don't want to pick it up. And I'm still trying to process that fear, I guess. Because I've been out there. I've come back each time.
Is it mainly mushrooms you've been working with, or ayahuasca as well?
I've never once had ayahuasca. I remember my first LSD experience back in the day, and I remember specifically not having to deal with all the nausea that you would with mushrooms. And the thought I had to myself, it was a joke at the time, like, this is the cheater's way into the psychedelic experience. You don't, no hard work involved. It just takes you right there. With mushrooms, it was always something profoundly different about the two, if you ask me. But
yes. Yeah.
I remember now what would be a good way to convey it. Back in the day, Dr. Sidney Cohen wrote an authoritative review of the safety of LSD in clinical trials. That's mainly where it was used at the time. And he noted that there was only a very small, like, I think 0.1% of psychiatric patients who had experienced long-term psychosis afterwards. And that's, to be perfectly honest, that's one thing I've been worried about. Although it is true that it's a very low risk. It's something that I've been thinking about. And the thing that Dr. Cohen had written in his review is that the people that are most likely to experience the bad trips, the challenging experiences with the adverse reactions, are the people who, he didn't use the word unstable, but it was essentially that they have, I want to look it up, brittle defenses. I feel like I'm at that stage right now where I had a cigar the other day, and it about put me on my knees, and I'm thinking, how in the hell am I going to get 3, 4, 5 grams of mushrooms down my gullet and be able to withstand the onslaught, the psychological onslaught that can come. That may sound like a bit too much, but for me, it's either. Go ahead. I'm not sure if I'm ready for that heavy of an experience again. And perhaps I need a little bit of coaching. Perhaps I should listen to my body and give it some time, you know? What do you think?
Whenever you do, it will be the right time. Whenever you do. and whatever dose you do, and it doesn't have to be a go all out thing. There um, can be great benefit from a slow entry. Is different. It seems like depending on what it is that's blocked up, uh, that and I guess everybody's processing is different. Your processing every time can be different. The form of processing that it takes, but it feels like to me that when I've had um, a long slog through a dark night of the shroom, um, then it's just a season that I have to go through. And as far as like the returning, obviously, I come at this from a spiritual perspective. This is a spiritual medicine sacrament tool for me. So I'm not a mental health provider. We all know that, though, right? But depending on what you may have, even people who have had some, I've worked with people who are bipolar 1 that just like this is what they're going to do. They're going to take psilocybin, and they need someone there with them, and so I'm there with them. And some people who I've seen that in particular take sometimes it's very like a 0.01%, but take a couple of weeks to really get grounded, and that's definitely something to be aware of. And that's what I'm thinking of when I think in terms of processing. It seems like if the more backed up the whole thing is, then and the more, I don't consider it still adverse effects or a bad trip, right? I consider it. It gets a form of processing that until that is kind of out of the way, then it's going to be that for probably a while. At least that's been my experience, you know. And so I don't know. I mean, if I know I've just been recently talking about this publicly, and I have not allowed myself to be formally diagnosed. But after watching and living with myself for as many years as I have, and getting feedback from my very patient and loving wife, I'm pretty solidly certain that I'm borderline, straight 9 traits out of 9 borderline, and as I look back on my journey with psychedelics, I can say that at times when I didn't have a community or just any kind of community or place to process and retrain myself, that it exacerbated some of the symptoms. Paranoia for sure, suicidality even. I mean, there would be times I'd come out of mushroom trips and just like there was one mushroom trip. See, this is again like, is this an adverse effect? This mushroom trip I had probably like 4 years ago now, where it's like the only way out of this hell planet, that prison planet, is to kill myself. And like I spent probably about 3 hours just rocking back and forth and knowing like that little thread of me that's like, you just got to ride it out. You just got to ride it out. That ride it out muscle is something that's not really talked about a lot. It's probably the most important reflex. It's probably the most important thing that you can train yourself with psilocybin, because it will not kill you. You will not go crazy forever. It's not going to do it.
Well, I appreciate what you said. I'd like to provide a bit of response. The first thing that comes to mind is that there was a recent case that I heard about. Dr. Rosalind Watts speaking about this was at, I want to say a TED conference. I don't think that's right. I actually posted about it on Twitter. But point being, she had recalled an instance of one of the patients in the clinical trials. I want to say it was with Imperial. And essentially, during the course of the clinical trial, one of the patients in the active arm who had received psilocybin, I think it was 20 plus milligrams, had essentially, in their experience, it felt as if their biological mother, it's trigger warning, it's about to get dark.
Okay.
in their experience, it felt as if their biological mother had tried choking them as an infant.
Mm-hmm.
And they came out of the experience, and although it's true that the CAPS scores, I believe, was used as a measure of depression, although they were a success on paper, they were still dealing with this residual baggage that had come with the experience. Was this real? Did this
Mm-hmm.
happen? If
Mm-hmm.
so, what should I do?
Mm-hmm.
And she had said that essentially that patient had benefited from the integration group that Dr. Watts had put together. I believe it's called ACER, ACER.
Okay.
But there is, I hate to disagree with you, but there have been documented cases involving fatalities involving psilocybin. One involved specifically, if you listen to, I think, episode 7 or 8 of Cover Story, it was an individual named Richard Burton, Burton, Richard Burton, out of California. He was with an underground practitioner, and the way that it was described in the podcast was that, and at some point during the experience, his heart stopped. And they follow up with the story about the coroner who had initially ruled the death as acute psilocin cardiotoxicity. However, get this, somebody in the above ground field had reached out to the coroner and said, you more than certainly have your facts wrong. There is no way that this happened, and apparently this was such a convincing argument that the coroner went back and changed the cause of death to, if I'm not mistaken, cardiac arrest, not assisted or facilitated, but incurred by psilocin overdose, something like that. There are
there's only one. I'm glad you brought this up. It's not a disagreement. I think
Yeah.
it's a great conversation to have. I know of a young man who in the UK, did you ever read this story, that was picking Liberty caps the entire day, and
that was actually in France.
Was it France? Okay. He had estimated like 150 Liberty caps or something like that throughout the day, and ended up dying of a heart attack. He was like 19 or 17. He was pretty young, I think. So I know of that, but it was never, that I knew of, it was never formally attributed to psilocybin. So
I remember that case. He had gone picking all day, went to a party with his friends. He was they kept emphasizing throughout, he was out of weed. He was out of weed. He went to the fields to get something so he could write. But if I'm not mistaken, they didn't even list a cause of death. They were too uncertain about the different factors.
Yeah.
But they had explicitly said, had he been provided immediate medical care, he could have been saved.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a phrase that we're starting to hear a little bit too much, in my opinion. We brought this up last time I was on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know that I guess I'm not listening for other reports. I know that SoulQuest had a death, right? I know there was one at Peaceful Mountain Way here in Kentucky, and ayahuasca, but it wasn't related to ayahuasca. It was the day after she had an aneurysm, as it was listed, and passed out and died. The psilocybin, I have that. The kid in France is the only one for all these decades that I know of, and I'd want to look into this. I mean, because what I'm seeing, like the establishment of the LD50. Now, when you think in terms of heart, you can think, there's a lot of variation there in individual health, right? But like, you're smoking a cigarette, and
Well aware.
I ain't got no doctor there with you. You know what I mean? Like, I do feel like there is a real slippery slope in trying to insist on medical professionals in a psychedelic space. I think that's a real slippery slope. pushes the boundaries on some pretty established freedoms here. So I don't know. But for me, one person out of, or even these two guys, and if there's 10 more that we find out about, of all the people who have been eating psilocybin, I don't know. That's a pretty low incident rate.
Well, I think also, Sasha, like you bring up a good point, because it makes me think, like when you think about like Ibogaine, that if you were to try to have incorporated, this same model that we have with Sanctuary for such a practice, when you are talking about something that is it's, I don't want to use the word that it is lethal, but it has such a lethality associated with its use and its cardiotoxicity. It's like
any drug in excessive dose can serve as a poison.
Oh yeah.
Even things that aren't drugs. Yeah. I mean,
obviously
water.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a great point. But
so, I mean, I think it's good that we have all the information that we can have. And if that's the first documented truly, because that would be, to my knowledge, that would be the first truly documented case. Yeah.
So. One thing I appreciated that you said earlier, what's a good way to put this? I had brought up the fact that I'm reluctant to pick up the psychedelic telephone and go back in that experience. But you suggested, not necessarily taking a heroic dose. I can ease in slowly. I think that's a good way to go. And I think that's also a good way to go for a lot of people who have pre-existing medical conditions, who are, for example, if Richard Burton had a heart issue, that's something that perhaps we don't know if he talked to his underground facilitator about that. But personally speaking, I have a heart anomaly. And there have been plenty of times where I've been, 3, 4, 5 grams deep, and I really feel a pump, and I'm thinking, oh God, is it just going to stop? Is it just going to stop?
How much do you exercise?
And, perhaps that's my body saying that I need to get out and exercise more. You're right. But
I'm just like, there's a lot of factors, and yeah, anyway, go ahead.
I think a lot of that, though, is based in the fear that came from drug propaganda growing up. That's something that a lot of people are still dealing with. I mean, heck, Ram Dass talked a lot about how difficult it was to trip in the 60s, in the early 60s, especially so him being a gay man, and, times weren't really accommodating for them. And to touch on what I was just saying, there's a lot of, whenever I when I've went into experiences in the past, I often bring a lot of, I try not to bring baggage with me, but I usually do. It's just stuff from work, stuff that's going on in the psychedelic community. And there are times where I just want to be able to let go and, as John Lennon used to say, turn off your mind, float downstream. I find that hard to do sometimes.
Yeah. It might not, even happen until you get all the other stuff out of the way, or a little bit cleared out,
Fair.
But yeah, everybody knows themselves best, really. And if you're like, I'm kind of in the same place right now. Like, I can hear the mushroom calling. Like, and I've had a few nibbles, and I'm picking ovoids and stuff this year. I've had a few nibbles, but I can kind of hear that big dose calling, and I just like, yeah, I'm not picking up right yet, and that's okay, like, and that's what like I said that very simply, but I mean it so sincerely, that when you eat mushrooms, it is the right time, And as far as the death thing, like, I don't know, man, this is something that is so worth diving into. We're running out of time here, but the loss of mind, loss of life are like that's the greatest two fears that we have, right? And so, of course, we're going to be confronted with that. Like we've got to get through that shit. If we're gonna advance, like we got to get through that. You know, so I think there's a ton of value there, but doing it obviously safely and supported. Where if you know yourself and you feel like you need, or I've seen people that need a couple of weeks to take off work. Like I cannot work for a couple of weeks and let this thing settle down.
There's also a point where if you do think you're going mad and you allow that theoretical possibility that this is now my reality, there's something kind of nice and appealing versus the reality that you came in before. Well, this is different. I haven't really explored this one.
It's just like the dying, once you give yourself over to it, then it's great. I mean, have you ever had an experience where you are certain for 2 hours you've lost your mind, you're not coming back, you broke it, and just as you start coming back together, you start to realize how fun that place was, and then it becomes the like, wait, no, I know I said I wanted to leave, but actually I don't. Let's just hang out for a little bit longer. I'm just getting used to this. I kind of like it, and then it's like, damn, there it goes. And so we started this conversation out kind of very similarly. Just for me anyway, in my practice, I did become very beneficial to give in to losing my mind. I could have been. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Sasha. I just wanted to throw this in there too. Like, I was talking with a friend, and I said, like, have you ever had dreams that you were on mushrooms? And they were like, no. And this person has more experience than I do. And like, I swear, like, I don't have many dreams. I mean, I probably do if I was to do the whole journal thing, wake up. But like, it's not one of these like, wow, this was a profound dream. But this night, like, my entire dream was like a psychedelic experience. And I was like, okay, I know that I need to go back into this space. And I haven't picked up the telephone call. Mostly like making sure that at the place that I want to, that I have the support around me and the structure to where I am able to do that at a, I don't want to say like a high dose, because whatever that means is relative, very much so in this world. And so, just making sure that there are those protocols and safe to where like, I would be tethered to the realm in some possible way. So like, I don't know, I just to let you know that you're not alone, like in how that you're feeling. I have no doubt though, that the mushroom will let me know that I have a missed call and a voicemail. So I'm understanding that as well.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing as well, Sasha. This has been another very pleasant conversation. Lots of good things explored here. Everybody, thanks for being a part of this. Your openness is your strength, Sasha. Yes, Conway, I believe. I agree. Emilio said he probably saw all he needed to see. He didn't have many, and he just was like, "Yeah, peace out, guys. This trip was a trip to end all trips." No disrespect to anybody's death, but yeah, life is full of humor, and we can even laugh at our own meat bags as they go out the door. All right, thank you all for being on Psilocybin with us, and until next week. Thanks, Tristan. Thanks, Sasha.
Peace. See you, Sasha.